Here are the 20 fastest muscle cars of the 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge, 14.45 seconds quarter-mile time. Muscle cars started out as affordable performance machines. Lots of power at prices the average buyer could actually afford. But as demand skyrocketed, some models started getting more and more expensive. Pretty soon, there was a clear need for a budget-friendly muscle car aimed at younger buyers and people who wanted speed without paying a fortune. The Plymouth Road Runner was the perfect answer. It was cheap, fun, and fast. Pontiac wanted something similar, and in 1969, the company introduced the GTO Judge. The Judge quickly became a legend of its own. Part of that was the name, taken straight from a popular television show of the time. But even more, it stood out with bright paint colors, a big rear spoiler, and funky graphics that made it impossible to miss. Of course, it wasn't just about looks. The GTO Judge packed 366 horsepower and came with a 4-speed transmission. Built from 1969 through 1971, the Judge always sat at the top of the lineup, and that's a big reason why it remains so highly desirable today. '69 Ford Mustang Boss 302, 14.41 seconds. The third redesign of the Mustang appeared for the 1969 model year, and the car grew in size once again. The engine choices and equipment list were thoroughly changed, and the Mustang lineup concentrated in two directions. One was luxury with the new Grande notchback model. The other was pure muscle with three new models, the Mach 1, Boss 429, and Boss 302. Also, Ford introduced the legendary 428 Cobra Jet engine as a regular production option, putting the Mustang among the fastest muscle cars of the era. But for us, the Boss 302 is the most important model. Produced for only 2 years, 1969 and 1970, the Boss 302 featured a 302 V8 engine, which was conservative at 290 horsepower. The actual output was closer to the 350 horsepower mark. The Boss 302 was a model intended for racing in the Trans Am Championship. Apart from a blackout hood, spoiler on the trunk, and other details, it featured a stiff, track-tuned suspension, a close-ratio gearbox, and a high-revving engine. The car was light without any unnecessary luxuries. '69 AMC SE Rambler, 14.30 seconds. The Rambler was an economy model with no performance options but a light body. Someone at AMC thought it would be a good idea to put a big engine in it and create a proper factory hot rod. This cool-looking and rare AMC was built in cooperation with transmission manufacturer Hurst. It was basically a budget Rambler model, but with a powerful 390 engine and lots of speed options from Hurst. Since it was light and small, it was fast and eye-catching because it was only available in the white, red, and blue color schemes. AMC made only around 1,500 of these great cars in 1969. '69 Oldsmobile 442, 14.20 seconds. At the time, Oldsmobile was under General Motors' ban that forbade the company from putting engines larger than 400 cubic inches in intermediate cars. This meant that the popular 442 model couldn't feature the biggest available engines. Due to that, it was inferior to Mopar muscle cars, which had engines of up to 440 cubic inches under the hood. However, the 1969 Oldsmobile 442 was not slow by any means. Its 400 V8 engine produced 325 horsepower, and that was enough for competent quarter-mile times. 1969 Ford Torino Cobra, 13.90 seconds. The legendary Torino Cobra jet debuted as a mid-year introduction in 1968 as a new muscle car engine from Ford. The pressure from Chevrolet's 427 V8, Mopar's 440 and 426 HEMI, and Pontiac's 421 and 428 V8 engines made the 427 medium risers obsolete. Ford needed a new mass-produced muscle engine to battle the competition. The Torino Cobra jet was designed to be affordable, yet durable, and powerful enough to compete. Ford officially rated the 428 Cobra jet at 335 horsepower, but it was immediately clear that the engine produced far more than that. Estimates ranged from over 400 to around 450 horsepower. To further boost the appeal of this new powerhouse, Ford launched a creative marketing campaign featuring a cartoon cobra burning rubber. The logo appeared on cars, promotional materials, clothing, and factory brochures. Even though it wasn't featured on every model, the cartoon cobra became so iconic that it's still instantly recognizable today. 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1, 13.9 seconds. The original Mach 1 was introduced as an affordable performance version of the Mustang sports roof in 1969 and featured a long list of options and 3 engines. The base was the 302 V8. Then there were the 351 V8 and the top-of-the-line model, the mighty 428 Cobra jet. Although Ford built over 20,000 Mach 1s in 1969, only a small number had the Cobra jet engine, which was the definitive option. Only the 428 Cobra jet-equipped Mach 1s had true performance potential and could beat other muscle cars on the street. The 428 Cobra jet had 335 horsepower, but everybody knew it produced more than 400 horsepower. With a 4-speed manual transmission and a skilled driver, the 428 Mach 1 could accelerate from 0 to 60 in just 5.5 seconds. This was an excellent number for the time and still demands respect today. (1969) Plymouth Barracuda 440, 13.89 seconds. Arguably the biggest muscle car news for 1969 was the introduction of the Barracuda 440 V8. It was a monster pony car with the biggest engine ever installed under the hood of a car in that segment. The Barracuda 440 produced 375 horsepower and a massive 480 pound-feet of torque. This made it fast, but also hard to launch due to loads of wheel spin. Due to the tight fit of the engine, there wasn't enough space for a power steering pump, so drivers had to use their muscles to turn this compact but overly powerful car. Plymouth only made a handful of these models, which makes them quite rare today. (1969) Mercury Cyclone, 13.89 seconds. The Cyclone was introduced in 1964 and stayed on the market until 1971, but the best version, which is understandably the most interesting to collectors, is the Cyclone CJ. Those 2 letters mark the presence of the famed 428 Cobra jet engine, which was the first truly street muscle engine built by Ford. With 7.0 liters of displacement and an advertised 335 horsepower, the Cobra jet actually made over 400 horsepower in real life. The Cyclone CJ was a serious street racing contender, and this new engine significantly increased performance. Along with Ford, Mercury was active in NASCAR racing during the late 1960s, and the Cyclone CJ played its part in those racing efforts. However, fewer than 3,500 Cyclone CJs were produced in 1969. Regular Cyclones without the Cobra Jet option were much more popular. 1969 Dodge Coronet RT, 13.88 seconds. The Coronet was a mainstream Dodge model that sold well in the sedan body style. However, Dodge had a trick up its sleeve: the Coronet RT. Same as the Charger RT, the RT option totally changed the nature of this car and transformed the ordinary two-door sedan into a muscle car beast. With a 440 V8 under the hood, the 1969 Coronet RT had 375 horsepower on tap. With its 4-speed manual transmission, good tires, and a skilled driver, it could return some respectable times. Mechanically, it had a lot in common with the Charger and the Plymouth Road Runner, but it was a bit lighter and better to drive. 1969 Chevy Nova SS, quarter-mile time, 13.87 seconds. The Nova was Bowtie's compact car, introduced first as the Chevy 2 in the early 1960s. The small and affordable model was just a scaled-down Chevelle or Impala. Still, it obtained serious street credibility by the end of the 1960s since it became a favorite street racer's weapon. The combination of the Nova's lightweight body and potent V8 engines made it very fast. Chevrolet introduced the SS350 and SS396 versions in 1968 and 1969, which were extremely fast. The 1970 model still retained classic styling and two powerful V8 engines as an option. Independent tuners like Yenko even offered brutally fast 427 conversions.
Good, warmed up now.
'69 Dodge Dart GTS 440, 13.71 seconds. The smallest Dodge was the compact Dart, which eventually got the muscle treatment with the GTS model. This included a 340 V8 with 325 horsepower, performance equipment, and a graphics package. The little Dart GTS was pretty fast, faster than some of the bigger muscle cars, in fact. Dodge claimed that the 340 was the largest engine that would fit in the Dart's engine bay. However, Mr. Norm, a famous Chicago area performance dealership, managed to shoehorn a big 440 into that tiny engine bay, creating the Dart 440. The car had a 375 horsepower rating and was incredibly fast, as records show. '69 Plymouth GTX, 13.7 seconds. Introduced in 1967 as a luxury option in the Belvedere lineup, this model shared its platform with the Dodge Coronet, but offered a far more upscale experience. Under the hood sat a 440 V8 with 375 horsepower as standard. Plymouth aimed the GTX at buyers who wanted performance with a touch of class, so it came loaded with just about every comfort feature available at the time, plus unique exterior trim to set it apart from the rest of the lineup. The GTX was known as the gentleman's hot rod, combining refined styling with serious power. The standard engine was the 440 Magnum, but for those who craved the ultimate in performance, Plymouth offered one optional upgrade, the legendary 426 HEMI. Because of its higher price tag compared to other Mopar muscle cars, the GTX didn't sell in huge numbers, making it quite a rare and desirable find today. (1969) Pontiac Trans Am, 13.70 seconds. In 1969, Pontiac wanted to present a model to homologate for Trans Am racing. To mask its intentions, Pontiac introduced the Firebird Trans Am as a loaded version. It featured big block power from the famous 400 V8 engine equipped with a Ram Air 3 or 4 intake system. However, with its signature white paint, blue stripes, Rally 2 wheels, and other equipment, this special version proved to be a tough seller. So they sold only 634 Firebird Trans Ams. Among those, only 8 were convertibles. 1969 Mustang Boss 429, 13.6 seconds. The mythical Mustang Boss 429 is a proper muscle car legend. Ford conceived it in 1969 as a pure racing engine intended for use in NASCAR championships. The Boss 429 featured a totally different engine architecture than the rest of Ford's big blocks. They made the Boss 429 much wider. It also had semi-HEMI combustion chambers that helped achieve higher revs and better flow inside the head. Ultimately, it produced more power and torque. With factory ratings of 375 horsepower, this unit produced over 500 horsepower and much more in race trim. Ford decided to put this engine into the Mustang, offering a limited production of Boss 429. However, NASCAR decided not to homologate it since they only accepted intermediate and full-size cars. But the Mustang was a pony car, so Ford homologated the Torino Talladega as the body and the Boss 429 as the engine. It participated in the 1969 season with Torinos and Mercury Cyclones powered by Boss 429 engines.
Oh, look at that!
(1969) Chevrolet Corvette, 13.57 seconds. The new third generation of the Corvette left the factory in 1968, bringing a new, sleek design called the Coke bottle look. The mechanics, chassis, and drivetrain were the same, and the car was still great value for the money. The C3 generation brought us some of the most powerful Corvettes, and the standard model's top range was the 427 big blocks. The Corvette C3 with the 427 V8 engine was available in several power levels, and the most powerful had 430 horsepower. It had multiple car setups, heavy-duty suspension, and wide tires. It was more expensive than standard muscle cars, but it was faster as well. 1969 Dodge Coronet Super B, 13.56 seconds. In 1969, the Super B package was still available on the Coronet model, and in 1971, it became an option on the Charger. The 1969 Coronet Super B was mechanically almost identical to the Dodge Charger, but it had different styling, lower weight, and was a bit faster. The RT option meant that buyers could get the 440 V8 as standard, but the 426 HEMI was available as an option. It made the 1969 Super B a very fast muscle car with respectable times. Also, the cool graphics made it instantly recognizable to any muscle car fan. (1969) Dodge Charger 500, 13.48 seconds. Most muscle car fans know the Dodge Charger lineup well, including the Wild Charger Daytona from 1969. But Daytona's predecessor, the Charger 500, was far less known and less successful. In the late 1960s, Dodge was desperate to compete in NASCAR, and the Charger was the perfect candidate. However, since NASCAR cars were reaching speeds close to 200 miles per hour on the newly built superspeedway tracks, aerodynamics became a major factor in performance. The standard Charger, with its deep grille and concave rear glass, wasn't aerodynamic enough. Despite its powerful engines and skilled drivers, it couldn't reach the speeds needed to win. So Dodge decided to create a limited edition version called the Charger 500, named because only that many were produced. It featured a flush-mounted grille, fixed headlights, and a conventional rear window to improve airflow. Under the hood, the Charger 500 came with a standard 440 engine, while the legendary 426 HEMI was available as an option. (1969) Corvette L88, 13.3 seconds. Even though the first big block, the 427 Corvette, left the factory in 1966, it was further refined with 4 levels of power for the 1969 model year. The list started with a 390 horsepower 427 V8 and ended with an extremely rare and powerful L88 427 V8. Corvettes equipped with this engine were a class for themselves, since the aluminum head L88 produced close to 600 horsepower and came with a heavy-duty suspension, brakes, and handling package. This option was for racers and was very expensive, almost doubling the price of the base '69 Corvette. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, 13.16 seconds. In the late 1960s, Can-Am was a famous racing series featuring prototype-class cars with V8 engines. Chevrolet wanted to purpose-build a power plant for this championship, so they produced an all-aluminum 427 big block called ZL1 in 1969. It was a high-revving 7-liter V8 with around 550 horsepower in mild tune. Chevrolet produced about 200 of those engines. While most of them went to Can-Am racing teams, 69 of the ZL1 were installed in Copo Camaros and sold to drag racing teams. The Camaro ZL1 was the same as a regular 1969 Camaro on the outside, but it was so fast it was barely street legal. The 1969 official Chevrolet literature doesn't mention the ZL1 option for the Camaro, but if you were a successful drag racer or dealer, you knew about this expensive option. That's why only 69 Camaro ZL1 left the factory. (1969) Plymouth Road Runner HEMI, 12.91 seconds. When it first appeared in 1968, the Road Runner proved to be a very influential and essential muscle car. It introduced a new trend of inexpensive and fun performance cars and became a strong seller that reshaped the whole segment. The entire idea behind the Road Runner was simple: to present a low-priced but still powerful model that would attract performance-minded buyers on a limited budget. The most appealing thing about the Road Runner was the fact that Plymouth used the popular cartoon character. Chrysler paid $60,000 for the rights to use the name and design, and everyone thought the company was crazy for doing so. But the sales results proved everybody wrong. The Road Runner became the first muscle car with wild graphics and was the one that started that whole trend. It came with a bench seat, no luxury options and manual steering, but it packed a powerful 383 V8 as the base engine, with buyers also able to opt for the 440 or the legendary 426 HEMI.